blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, March 31st. Your readers today are Lori and
Lita.
Let's start out with the weather. Can anybody guess the weather word today? It is rain. They say breezy and a shower this morning, but it was more like massive lightning and a downpour. Then showers and a heavier thunderstorm. Thunderstorms can bring hail and damaging winds. High of 65 today. Periods of rain and a thunderstorm tonight with a low of 42. Looking into the week, tomorrow, Wednesday, cooler with morning rain. Thursday, occasional rain. Friday, warmer with rain. Saturday, a shower and thunderstorms. Sunday, AM rain, breezy and cooler. But Monday, decreasing clouds. If you want to be warm, go to Hugoton, Kansas, 93. Or go to Cut Bank, Montana, if you want to be cooler, 19.
Ooh.
I don't know that I believe this, but it says at the Hollymont ski area, there are 37 trails open with spring conditions. Sunsets tonight at 7:40. On to you, Lita.
Well, high gas prices are hurting those who drive their own vehicles for work. Leslie Sherman Schaefer, an Uber driver in the San Francisco Bay Area, likes to start each shift with a full tank of gas. It used to cost her around $25 to fill her Toyota Corolla. She spent closer to $40 since the Iran war began and pushes up the average U.S. price for a gallon of regular gasoline by $1. Sherman Schaefer, a retired dental office assistant who picks up Uber passengers 5 days a week, said she's putting in extra hours to cover the difference. "We don't get reimbursed for gas. We rely on the generosity of the tip," Sherman Schaefer said. "Some passengers have tipped more to compensate for higher gas prices, but most don't tip at all," she said. Driving a car, van, or truck is a big part of many Americans' workdays. Nearly 27% of civilian workers cited driving as a physical demand of their jobs last year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Millions of drivers use personal vehicles for their work, from delivery and rideshare providers to self-employed electricians, nannies, home health care aides, and real estate agents. As the war enters a fifth week and continues to disrupt global oil supplies, many of those workers are now scrambling to make ends meet. The national average price for gas reached $3.99 per gallon on Monday, up 34% from a month earlier, according to the AAA. "With everything going up, it's impossible to save a dime," Sherman Schaefer said. "Some companies compensate employees for using their own vehicles, including the cost of gas." In the U.S., the Internal Revenue Service sets a standard mileage rate every year that businesses and private contractors can use to calculate tax deductions. Alpine Maids, a housekeeping company based in Denver, pays cleaners the 2026 federal reimbursement rate of 72.5 cents per mile for the distance they drive to clients' homes. But with gas prices spiking, that money is not going as far, said Chris Willett, a former geologist who now runs Alpine Maids. "Our maids drive their own cars, so it's kind of like their paycheck got smaller," Willett said. "They're all upset." Willett said he reduced how often maids must report to the office from daily to once a week and rejiggered cleaning assignments so employees aren't driving as far between clients. If gas prices climb further, he said, he might increase what he charges customers so he can pay workers more. Molly Kennefick, the owner of Doggy Llama Pet Care Incorporated in Oakland, California, said she recently raised her gas reimbursement rate to 80 cents per mile for 15 employees who use their own vehicles to pick up dogs and take them for hikes around the Bay Area. The rate increase will stay in place until gas prices in their area drop below $5, that's a lot, for at least a month. Kennefick said she planned to raise prices for the company's services in May, but she doesn't want to increase them too much because she's worried she'll lose clients. So Kennefick is also dipping into her own savings to pay for gas. "The economy is hard for people. Everybody's under strain," she said. "I can take some of the load and the company can take some of the load, provided this doesn't go on too long." Ride-hailing and food delivery platforms that rely on gig workers don't reimburse drivers for gas, but some are offering temporary incentives in response to rising gas prices. DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, and Instacart are providing more than the usual cash back on gas purchases for drivers who use company-branded debit cards. DoorDash and Instacart are giving a weekly fuel payment to drivers who travel 125 miles or more making deliveries. Sarah Knoll, who spent about 20 hours a week making deliveries for DoorDash in Lynchburg, Virginia, said the measures help somewhat. But she said she's noticed more customers declining to add tips to their orders as gas prices have increased. Knoll has started refusing any orders that won't average out to be $1 per mile, including the $2.50 per order she gets from DoorDash. That cancels out many users who aren't tipping or give only small tips. It takes nearly double the cost to fill my tank, Knoll said. $10 used to get me a decent amount. Now it only gets me 3 gallons. Owners of diesel-powered vehicles have seen even steeper fuel price increases since the war started on the 28th of February, affecting drivers around the world. Drivers of diesel-powered jeepneys in the Philippines went on strike for 2 days last week to protest their higher costs. In France, dozens of buses and trucks drove slowly on the Paris Ring Road Monday to demonstrate their concern about rising diesel prices. Drivers and businesses want the French government to provide aid to mitigate the impact. The major difficulty right now is finding our balance on our business, since we sold services with the vehicles at a certain price for diesel that was much cheaper. And we're not going to ask customers to pay that difference, said Sarah Bahirs, manager of the bus transportation company Ulysses Cars. Average U.S. diesel prices climbed a whopping 44% over the last month, according to AAA. A few weeks ago, Rachel Hunter paid $3.62 a gallon to fill the single diesel truck used by Cactus Crew Junk Removal and Thrift Store, a Phoenix business she and her husband co-founded. The same fuel now costs $6.09 per gallon in Phoenix, according to AAA. The truck carries all kinds of heavy cargo, from slabs of solid maple bowling lanes to loads of concrete paver tiles. So fuel costs quickly add up, Hunter said, particularly with a truck that only gets 12 or 13 miles to the gallon. Hunter has started quoting prices that reflect the jump in prices. She worries she's in a vicious cycle that could hurt the business if oil prices remain. We don't want to get a bad name for being overpriced, she said. I'll be able to explain it where people can understand, but it doesn't mean they can afford it.
And talking about affording things, more college students are turning to food pantries. To make sure she has enough healthy food to eat, Alana Jackowitz has been a regular user of Milligan's Food Pantry, and that's on Buffalo State University's campus. And she's done that for much of her college career. And she's not just a consumer, she now works at the food pantry in a paid position as a student coordinator who helps other students sign up for SNAP benefits, which are also known as food stamps. Jackowitz, a senior majoring in social work, said that students from all walks of life and backgrounds occasionally have trouble making ends meet, which is why food pantries have become a fixture on college campuses over the last 10 years. For students in general, brain food is real. What you feed your body with is directly going to impact your academic performance. I've seen my ability to focus get better with eating healthier and being food secure and not worrying about where you're going to get your next meal. You're able to focus more on your schoolwork because your mind isn't thinking, how am I going to eat? She said. About 23% of college students, approximately 3.8 million people, experienced food insecurity back in 2020, the most recent year for which data was available, according to a 2024 report from the United States General Accounting Office. A majority of them, 2.2 million, had very low food security, meaning they reported multiple instances of eating less than they should or skipping meals because they could not afford enough food. The lack of healthy, nutritious foods can have an impact on students' mental health, belonging, and academic success, experts and students say. Without enough nutritious and healthy food for fuel, college students are more likely to have a lower grade point average than students who don't have to worry about having enough food. Students facing hunger struggle with depression and are also more likely to report their overall health as being poor, according to Feeding America. The issue became serious enough that in 2018, the New York State Governor's Office mandated that all 64 State University of New York campuses provide pantries to students. Many private institutions have done the same. Canisius University, Damon, D'Youville University, and Villa Maria all operate food pantries that benefit students and members of their campus communities who may experience food insecurity. Some suburban school districts even operate pantries for students and families, including Amherst Central School District's Tiger's Den Food Pantry, housed at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. And Cheektowaga Sloan's Teachers Union developed the Little Free Pantry, a 24-hour pantry that opened back in 2023. Milligan's Food Pantry, which opened in 2000 on Buffalo State's campus, predated the statewide push for campus pantries by nearly 2 decades. It provides supplemental food to any registered student experiencing food insecurity, regardless of income and residency, on or off campus.
Good for them.
It has also seen a significant increase in demand for food, from a couple of hundred students served per semester to 700 students, said Ashley Maracle, who is the Director of Care and Support at Buffalo State University, who also runs the food pantry there. There's an increasing need. Maracle said many people think of food insecurity as not knowing where the next meal is coming from, but it is more than that. Food insecurity happens anytime someone struggles to feed themselves appropriately. Do I have access to something for calories? Is my only source of food the corner store? Do I have access to foods that I have the ability to prepare? We have students in residential halls, but not all the students have pots and pans. Not all students know how to cook those things. So for me, food insecurity is, do I have access to foods that are meaningful to me? Milligan's partners with Feed More Western New York, a hunger relief agency that distributes food to nearly 400 food pantries, soup kitchens, emergency shelters, schools, university, and colleges throughout Erie, Niagara, Cattaraugus, and Chautauqua counties. In 2024, Feed More assisted 165,722 people, including approximately 53,000 children and 41,000 older adults. It was a 46% increase compared with people served in 2021. And in the past year, Feed More has seen about a 24% increase in people served through its school pantry program, which serves 20 high school and college campuses, said Catherine Schick, Feed More Public Relations Manager. And of all the agencies that Feed More provides food to, use has increased by 12% since last year. That could include someone going to a pantry for the first time, or people who had been using the pantries occasionally, just going more frequently to help make ends meet. Certainly, we are seeing food insecurity continue to grow, to remain a massive problem, Schick said. We know it's on the rise across the board, and college students, just like so many other people in our community, are another population that has to try to afford basic resources in a time that the cost of living and food continue to rise. There's a SNAP solution. In addition to food pantries, SNAP benefits provide another way for college students to combat food insecurity. The Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps, can often serve as a first line of defense against hunger. Eligibility requirements include working while in school, being a single parent, and other qualifications, but many students do not know that they are eligible, or they just assume that they are not. SNAP can be challenging to access, Schick said. Feed More helps students through outreach team members who go on campuses to help college students understand what SNAP is and to get them enrolled if they meet eligibility requirements. Jackowitz is the SNAP coordinator at Milligan's, where she helps students apply and answer their questions about eligibility and the application process. She started receiving SNAP benefits herself in her junior year. I feel so much healthier now than I ever have, honestly, she said. I started shopping more and cooking at home and experimenting with different cuisines. We have to squeeze every penny because there's so many things we need to pay for, and as a student, we're always like, when's the other shoe going to drop? And we can't afford our education anymore. It's very, very stressful. I've been using SNAP for about a year, she added, and I love it, really.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 14 minutes past the hour. And with TSA workers paid, airport wait times ease significantly. Abysmal wait times at airports dwindled Monday as Transportation Security Administration workers got their first paychecks in more than a month, apparently prompting fewer agents to call out. 4-hour wait times that plagued some airports last week dropped to minutes as some TSA employees saw weeks of back pay in their bank accounts. One TSA worker in Houston said he'll finally be able to buy the food, gas, and medication he needs. Others hope to pay their missed rent before they get evicted. But one TSA employee in Chicago said she still hasn't been paid Monday morning, and others say they're missing partial paychecks. CNN has reached out to the TSA and the Department of Homeland Security for comment about when employees will receive all the pay they're owed. About 61,000 TSA employees have been working without pay since a partial government shutdown started on the 14th of February. Collectively, they've missed more than $1 billion in pay, leaving some unable to afford basic necessities. Some have been forced to take other jobs. By late Monday morning, even the longest wait times at most major airports were less than 30 minutes. Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport, an epicenter of last week's misery, saw 75-minute security lines before dawn on Monday, and several hours later, that number plunged to fewer than 10 minutes. At Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the world's busiest airport based on passenger traffic, travelers waited as little as 3 minutes. The number of TSA officers calling out from work has improved in recent days after almost 3,500 workers didn't show up to work Thursday and over 3,500 called out on Friday. The number dropped to about 2,800 Saturday, according to DSH data. Monday's data will not be available until Tuesday. But even with the long-delayed back pay, the TSA workforce will not be the same. About 500 workers, or about 0.82% of total personnel, have quit since the partial government shutdown started. Aaron Barker, an Atlanta TSA officer, said he thinks the number of agents will keep dropping as workers grapple with fallout from missing payments. I do think that there's going to be a mass exodus of officers, said Barker, the president of the American Federation of Government Employees Local 554. Officers have gone into debt. Credit has been shot, he said. Officers have been evicted and cars have been repossessed. Some TSA workers have paid for basic needs by maxing out their credit cards and incurring late fees they also cannot afford. A TSA agent in Houston, who's requested anonymity, said he'll be able to buy groceries and pay back the loans he took out, but he still hasn't received all the back pay he's owed. Another officer at George Bush Intercontinental said he received 2 full paychecks, but not a partial paycheck he was expecting. DHS said it would start sending employees their back pay Monday after President Trump ordered the agency Friday to immediately resume compensating them. But some workers question the president's directive, including whether they can expect to get their next paycheck in 2 weeks. TSA agents have long been perceived as political pawns when lawmakers can't agree on funding packages and parts of the government shut down. This is a natural disaster that was caused by Congress, said Johnny Jones, Secretary-Treasurer of the American Federation of Government Employees, which represents TSA workers. Back pay is not going to address the systemic issues, he said. In the past 5 months, we have been shut down 50% of the time.
Yeesh.
Jones said it will be difficult for TSA agents to recover from the impact of this shutdown. The vast majority are devastated, he said. My colleagues, they're like, our finances are ruined.
And now Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein tells us about Buffalo winters being a point of pride. It feels like everyone in Western New York has compiled a list of worst winters, whether it was the Christmas blizzard of 22, the October storm of 06, or the blizzard of 77. That's the one. Chances are one particular one stands out. I remember arriving in the area in 2008 and having everyone describe in detail harrowing tales of power lines down, layers of ice that made it impossible to venture outside, and the loss of 500,000 trees. By then, 2 years after the October storm, most people had purchased a second generator, hoping to be better prepared if it ever happened again. As for 22, I was here. The snow was so thick the plows were not able to clear our street for almost a week. I remember carrying my daughter's heavy suitcase up our long street, lifting it over my head and bringing it to the car of a friend's parent who was heroically helping to transport a group of 6 teenagers to a conference in Boston. But for me, that pales in comparison to the winter of 2015. when for 7 straight weeks the temperatures never rose much above zero. The conditions were so bad that January that on the way to a burial, the cemetery had called and said they were unable to prepare the grave. Layers of permafrost had broken 2 of their excavators. They would need a few hours to procure a third one so that they could try again. A picture recently popped up on Facebook Memory of me from that winter, bundled in layers of clothing, perched precariously on the roof outside of my daughter's room. The snow had built up to such an extent that we were concerned that the roof would cave in. So there I was, on the first sunny day in weeks, trying to push sheets of ice off the side of our house onto the driveway. That was the winter of 15 in a nutshell. Sustained, unrelenting misery. When we decided to move to Western New York, we knew what we were getting into. Buffalo's reputation for brutal winters far preceded it. But instead of being scared off by it, my wife and I were excited to make our way here. Both of us had lived in 4-season climates most of our lives, and we already knew a thing or two about cold weather. Regular snow was a draw for us. We wanted real winters, and boy, have we gotten our money's worth. Winters are a mark of pride for us Buffalonians. They give us grit and character. Send us the worst and we'll figure out not only how to survive, but how to thrive. And when the weather finally relents and spring and summer arrive, we know we will have earned them. In nearly 2 decades here, Old Man Winter has yet to disappoint. This year in particular was hard. Maybe not as bad as 22, 15, 06, or 77, but bad nonetheless. Weeks of freezing temperatures, not just here but across the region, gave even Buffalonians a run for their money. But we, as always, persevered. On a recent Zoom call, several people from other northern cities were complaining about how weather had brought life to a standstill. Hearing their tales of woe, I just had to chuckle, knowing that no matter how bad things had been for them, we likely had it worse. But unlike for them, life here had gone on, as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening at all.
I love it. I love it. And in the editorial cartoon, we have on the picture a very teeny tiny regular cord with power grid written on it. And it actually, with the 3-prong thing, looks like a face, like a mouth open, like, oh my God. And then this big, massive plug of data centers, of course, indicating the power that we don't have to give it. Very good. And moving over to the Buffalo editorial, big deficiencies persist. When a racist killer steps into Tops Supermarket on Jefferson Avenue on the 14th of May in 2022, his action, killing 10 people and wounding 3, sent shockwaves of grief and anger that still resonate. The response by the entire community to pitch in and help an East Side community still healing has been tremendous, but there is still so much to be done, including providing better access to fresh food. The killer's heinous act put a spotlight on the inequities baked into the surrounding neighborhood, including the lack of full-service grocery stores. It is with this gap in mind that lawmakers and advocates from Western New York urged Governor Kathy Hochul and legislative leaders to include $10 million in the state budget. The purpose of the money? To expand the number of grocery stores offering fresh food in underserved communities. State Senator April Baskin, who sponsored a bill to require the funding, spoke recently at a news conference in the state capitol. Baskin said the limited number of area grocery stores left the Tops Supermarket on Jefferson Avenue vulnerable to the racist massacre. The killer, then 18-year-old Peyton Gendron of Broome County, selected the East Side Market to target the largest number of black victims. Baskin's outrage is well justified at what she called the deviant science in Gendron's calculations on where to find a concentration of black people to kill. As she said, no one should fear going to the grocery store in their own neighborhood. Baskin's bill could turn things around. Known as the Food Retail Establishment Subsidization for Healthy Community Acts, or FRESH, the bill was included in the Senate's recent budget plan and is co-sponsored by Assemblymember Al Stirp, a Democrat from Cicero. The bill was previously sponsored by Baskin's predecessor, now Representative Tim Kennedy, and passed both houses in 2024. Hochul vetoed it, citing other food programs. She said the bill would come at a substantial cost that is not accounted for in the state's financial plan. Baskin and Strip insist their bill is different. Their points are worth taking into consideration. The governor should consider those differences. As Strip explains, the executive level is focused on helping people buy food. There is certainly nothing wrong with that effort, but as the assembly member from Cicero said, we want to provide access to it, and that's different. The difference could also mean more help for small grocery stores looking to expand. As Niagara Falls City Council Chair Brian Archie pointed out, the food available in many smaller neighborhood stores is often not fresh or nutritious. Archie, who lives in one of the poorest zip codes in Niagara Falls, said that the lack of transportation makes the couple of miles to reach the nearest grocery store too far for many residents. Health outcomes in the area, he said, are not the best. This is where that small business owner opens a grocery store in underserved areas can make the difference by offering fresh food on a daily basis, similar to grocery stores in more affluent communities. Other advocates attending the Albany News Conference in support of the bill, including Jessica Gilbert Overland, the director and co-founder of the Good Food Buffalo Coalition, and Colin Bishop, the chief communications officer for Feedmore, Western New York. Gilbert Overland shared what farmers have been saying. They need access to new and stable markets and New York State policy to support them. It's something for the governor to carefully consider.
And Susan Estrich has an opinion. End the war or explain it, as clarity fades fast. The costs of this war are becoming painfully clearer and clearer. The Friday headlines of the New York Times capture part of the picture. Global food supply faces dangerous bottleneck in Strait of Hormuz. That's the skyrocketing price of fertilizer at work. Diesel is a bigger problem for consumers than gasoline, hitting everyone from brewers to trucking companies who will pass those prices on to consumers. Oil prices continue to climb despite Trump's delaying bomb threat. Gas prices here in California go up before your very eyes at the gas station. And my favorite, where might the Iran war hit your wallet? Start with raspberries. Raspberries? Who knew? And those, of course, are only some of the costs. The stock market is tanking, and with it, 401ks. The administration is asking Congress for $200 billion to fund a war it hasn't even been asked to approve. Are we even allowed to wonder about what that kind of money could do for us at home? Is it any wonder that recent polls show as much as 59% of the public opposing this war? No one is more frustrated by this than my Iranian American friends. They see the case for this war. Not only do they have friends and families who have suffered terribly, but they believe this Iranian regime is a threat to the region, to our allies, and ultimately to us. Is it? I have yet to hear that case made clearly by this administration. What is the strategy? What was the plan for the Strait of Hormuz? Was there a plan? Was the threat from Iran imminent? What is their nuclear capacity? What would it take to win this war? What would winning even look like? We have heard so many conflicting explanations. Are we at war because Israel pushed us into it, which is no explanation at all? Are we persisting because the Saudis want us to, which is no better? If our boys and girls are risking their lives, our interests must be at stake. If we're paying the price, the benefit to us should be clear. It isn't. There is a reason the founders delegated the war-making power to Congress, with most of its members standing for elections every 2 years. Making the case to Congress for this war and justifying the kind of appropriation the administration is seeking might go a long way towards answering the questions that are being raised about this war. But so far, the Republican Congress is refusing to do its job. And boy, are they spinning. Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth must be dizzy as all hell. Has Iran's nuclear capacity been obliterated? Did we do that last time, this time, or not yet? Is the war ending soon? Are we making progress in peace talks, or does Iran have no interest in making peace? What are we supposed to make of these moving deadlines? A good sign or an ominous one? President Trump faces a major political problem. History teaches that you can't pursue a war for very long without public support. It's one thing when the opposition party, here the Democrats, raises questions. That's to be expected. But Trump faces as loud challenges to his war from inside the Republican Party as he does from the opposition. He hasn't justified it sufficiently for his own base. That leaves him with a very simple choice. End it or explain it. It's one or the other.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes past the hour. And unaffordable health care is forcing terrible trade-offs. Earlier this month, as I waited to pick up a prescription at my local CVS, I watched a man leave without his elderly father's medication. The pharmacist had tried several tricks to lower the cost. It wasn't enough. When the man heard the bottom line, he stuffed his hands in his pockets and after a long, awkward silence, walked away. That's becoming a depressingly common scene. Americans are struggling to pay for their medicines, living in fear of health emergencies, and skipping out on basics like meals in order to cover their insurance premiums. Increasingly, they are going without insurance altogether. That strain is showing up in a slew of recent surveys that point like a neon arrow to a growing problem for the Trump administration. Healthcare has become unaffordable for most Americans. A bigger problem? Most of Trump's policies announced so far will make the situation worse. The latest polling data underscoring the challenges Americans face comes from health policy researchers at KFF and offers the first glimpse at the fallout from the recent loss of Affordable Care Act subsidies. Without those tax credits, premiums for marketplace plans have soared, leading to monthly bills that are double their previous cost or even more. The KFF survey, conducted in late February and March, follows up on a group of ACA customers previously interviewed in November amid a fierce congressional battle over extending the Biden-era subsidies. These hits significantly lowered the cost of higher quality insurance and brought millions of new enrollees into the marketplace. The survey's findings are not pretty, the president and CEO of KFF, Drew Altman, told reporters. Some 80% of people enrolled in marketplace plans say costs like monthly premiums and deductibles have gone up and it's straining their budgets. More than half tell us they can't afford food or other basic needs because of their new higher healthcare costs, Altman said. 1 in 10 people have dropped coverage altogether, and 1 in 6 people who kept it said they weren't sure they could afford their plan for the entire year. Meanwhile, about a quarter of enrollees have transitioned to cheaper, high-deductible plans that could be financially disastrous if they experience a health emergency. In the past, subsidies automatically renewed from year to year, but a little-noticed provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will end that practice in 2028, noted Adriana McIntyre, a health policy expert at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Given many people allow their plans to roll over, the concern is they will find their premium in 2028 has skyrocketed. And if they don't notice during the grace period to change it, they could end up dropping coverage altogether. Most Americans under 65 get insurance through their employers, and they too are feeling the strain. 4 in 10 with private insurance say their health care costs rose in the past year, according to a recent survey. A third of the privately insured said they had trouble paying other bills, and a quarter reported putting less money in their retirement funds because of health care costs. A recent Gallup poll found that the insured and uninsured alike are skipping meals, borrowing money, stretching out their medicines, and cutting back on other essentials to pay for doctor's visits or prescriptions. Next year's data will probably look bleaker. That's because, so far at least, Trump's policies do little to improve the situation for most Americans, and if anything, will make it worse. The president's signature, OBBB, introduced new work requirements for Medicaid that are expected to leave millions more uninsured when they kick in. Trump has focused much of his policymaking on lowering the cost of prescription drugs, an issue that resonates with Americans regardless of their insurance status. A separate KFF poll conducted in recent weeks found that the public is increasingly worried about being able to pay for their medicine. Yet Trump's two main efforts, benchmarking U.S. drug prices to those in other wealthy countries and launching the direct-to-consumer portal TrumpRx, haven't done much to reduce what consumers actually pay for medicine. The White House's much vaunted most favored nation deals with drug companies were billed as correctives to the long-standing imbalance between the high prescription prices paid by Americans and the comparatively cheap cost enjoyed by their peers abroad. But recent comments by Chris Klump, a top federal health official suggests the administration is more focused on getting other countries to raise their drug prices rather than convincing companies to lower them in the U.S. Klomp's remarks also highlighted a flaw in the most favored nation plan. Companies could put off launching their products abroad, leaving them without a comparison when federal health officials are negotiating prices in the U.S. Meanwhile, Trump RX only helps people who pay out of pocket for their medicine, and even they don't seem to be getting a good deal. A recent analysis by the left-leaning policy think tank Center for American Progress found that of the 54 drugs listed on the portal, just one, the IVF medication Cetrotide, was cheaper than currently available generic drugs or products found on sites like GoodRx. The rising cost of healthcare might have predated Trump's second term, but his policies are exacerbating it. The consequences aren't subtle either. They're being felt every day by ordinary Americans forced to consider what they are willing to give up just to stay healthy.
And Kimi Mai Ong and John Juan Diaz say legal defense services for immigrants benefit all. The immigrants and refugees who make Western New York such a rich melting pot are under constant attack. Over the past 2 decades, refugee resettlement has revitalized cities such as Buffalo. Despite economic downturns, successive waves of immigrants have kept Buffalo strong and supported its economy. The February death of Nurul Amin Shah Alam, after being released by Border Patrol at night outside a closed coffee shop, shocked us all. Recently, our team at Children's Defense Fund, New York, received another referral regarding a young man detained by immigration enforcement agents in the Buffalo area. Immigrant and mixed-status families throughout our state live in constant fear of family separation and detention. We're pleased that New York State Senate and Assembly leadership proposed to allocate an additional $110.8 million to support the legal defense and other services for immigrants. This additional funding would bring hope and the opportunity to thrive to millions of Western New York youth. Access to social services and legal defense can lead to better outcomes for Western New York families with children who are facing separation. The American Immigration Council reported that between 2019 and 2024, almost 27% of immigrants with legal representation, regardless of custody status, were ordered to be removed, compared with almost 62% of those without counsel. New York State has 350,000 backlogged immigration cases, but only about half are represented by lawyers. It's estimated that preventing deportation of these 53,000 individuals would bring over $8.3 billion in revenue to the nation, state, and local governments around Buffalo. Other proposals in Albany could protect the region's collective well-being. Lawmakers should also pass the Access to Representation Act, which would guarantee any New Yorker facing deportation an attorney, and the Building Up Immigrant Legal Defense Act, which would create a grant program to recruit and train lawyers and social workers handling increasing immigration caseloads. Let's avoid future stories like what happened to Mr. Shah Alam and keep Western New York families together by making investments and policies that uplift Western New York's immigration communities. Let's not hurt them.
Amen to that. And like the Olympic truce, the World Cup needs an ice truce. And this is from Minky Worden. With the world's largest sporting event, the World Cup, slated to begin in June, the United States should call a truce in the campaign of terror being waged by Immigration and Custom Enforcement and other federal agencies against immigrants and others. Major sporting events have long relied on the so-called Olympic truce, which dates back to the 8th century BC, when the warring city-states of ancient Greece agreed to cease hostilities so that athletes and fans could travel safely to and from the games. The International Olympic Committee and the United Nations revived the concept in 1993, and to this day, the UN puts forward a resolution before each Olympics calling on member nations to observe the Olympic truce. Given the risk posed by the Trump administration's abusive immigration operation to World Cup 2026 soccer fans, tournament workers, and community hosting the game, FIFA should back a similar ice truce as it organized this year's World Cup. During the first week of 2026, the world watched in horror as federal agents in Minneapolis shot and killed 2 U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, who were protesting and observing immigration enforcement operations in their community. Beyond Minnesota, immigration officers are engaging in excessive violence in deploying military-grade weapons during enforcement operations. In communities across the nation, federal agents, masked and without identification, have swarmed individuals, broken car windows and front doors, and injured people. Rising numbers of people are locked up in ICE detention centers. 13 people have died in ICE custody since the beginning of 2026. Fans attending the upcoming tournament, regardless of immigration status, may be at risk. From January to October of 2025, ICE arrested at least 92,392 people in and around the 11 U.S. cities hosting World Cup matches, according to data analyzed by Human Rights Watch. Some of these operations relied on detaining people on the basis of their perceived national origin. To be a host city for the World Cup should not mean becoming an ICE enforcement epicenter. On the 10th of February, Representative Nellie Powell from New Jersey, and whose district includes MetLife Stadium, where the World Cup final will be played, asked acting ICE Director Todd Lyons if he would pause operations at World Cup matches. Lyons testified that ICE is a key part of the overall security apparatus for the World Cup. Since then, Powell and members of Congress from World Cup host states have introduced 3 bills to block ICE during the World Cup, including restrictions on ICE on public transport and fan fests during the tournament. We know from our research at Human Rights Watch that ICE has conducted immigration enforcement actions around FIFA events. Last July, a father, an asylum seeker, took his 2 children to the Club World Cup final at MetLife Stadium. Police detained him, then turned him over to ICE. FIFA built out a human rights framework for 2026 with lofty language about welcoming everyone in an environment where they feel safe, included, and free to exercise their rights. A coalition of human rights and labor organizations have pressed FIFA to match its rhetoric with action. Human rights commitments are baked into the bid that the United States, Canada, and Mexico made to host the World Cup, an event that is expected to bring more than 1 million visitors to the United States. A World Cup ICE truce should guarantee, at minimum, that fans, players, journalists, and their families can travel to and inside the United States freely, safely, and with dignity. On the 13th of January, Human Rights Watch wrote to FIFA to express grave concerns over the potential impact of U.S. government immigration policies on the 2026 FIFA World Cup, warning that ICE activities at stadiums, fan zones, and in host cities could violate the human rights of fans, workers, and community members. FIFA did not reply. To protect fans and indeed its World Cup brand, FIFA should hearken back to the practices of ancient Greece and insist on an ICE truce to ensure federal agents do not conduct violent immigration enforcement in and around World Cup venues. Rights abusive arrests and deportations have no place in the world's games.
And in Buffalo, the Weinberg campus auction is canceled by the mortgage holder. The proposal to sell the bulk of Weinberg campus's real estate and buildings at an auction has been scrapped after the entity that holds the mortgage on the property pulled its support for the sale. Kevin Lelenek, an attorney from Gross Schumann representing Weinberg campus in its bankruptcy proceedings, said Monday that BP Gettsville Campus LLC withdrew its consent. Weinberg campus now has no mechanism to sell the Amherst property free of liens to give a buyer at auction a clean property title. Without that support, Weinberg campus withdrew its motion Monday in bankruptcy court to sell the 38-acre swath of real estate, which includes 498,000 square feet of building space. BP Gettsville campus holds the first property mortgage on the property and is owed about $22.5 million. Lelenek said the case will either be converted into a Chapter 7 liquidation or it will be dismissed. Either option means prolonging the end of Weinberg campus's saga. The company filed for Chapter 11C bankruptcy protection in February of 25. William K. Harrington, the United States trustee for Region 2, on March 19th filed a motion to dismiss all of Weinberg Campus's Chapter 11 cases because the debtors had failed to pay quarterly fees, file monthly operating reports on time, and maintain a workers' compensation insurance policy. In addition, the trustee claimed Weinberg Campus and a related entity had grossly mismanaged Stovroff Towers apartments, noting that several squatters had occupied vacant rooms at the apartment complex that is intended for frail, elderly tenants in need of social services. If the case is dismissed, Lelinek said all creditors can resume collection efforts on their claims through the state courts. For the lender, BP Getzville, that would mean it would continue with its foreclosure proceedings that it had filed against Weinberg Campus before the Senior Living Community Organization filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy more than a year ago. A hearing on the motion to dismiss the case is scheduled to be held 10 a.m. April 13th before Chief Judge Carl Buckey. That is the day of reckoning. Without the support from BP Getzville, Lelinek said, Weinberg Campus's efforts to sell the 30.2 acres of land east of Ellicott Creek and west of the flood channel on the property to the Jewish Community Center of Greater Buffalo Incorporated are also on hold. Separate from the land, Weinberg Campus also has an agreement in place to sell Rosa Copland's Certified Home Health Agency license to Jewish Home of Rochester, and that was for $500,000. But in a court filing Friday, the State Health Department opposed the motion to sell the Certified Home Health Agency license. In the filing, a state attorney said that Rosa Copland's Certified Home Health Agency license is not operational and thus it can't be sold. To comply with Health Department policy, Rosa Copland should have submitted a closure plan for state approval and surrendered its certified home health agency license when it stopped serving patients, and that was more than 2 years ago. Instead, the state claimed Weinberg Campus has been unresponsive to requests from the Health Department to clarify the storage of patients' information and medical records since it ceased operations. A hearing on the motion to sell the home agency license was adjourned to 10 a.m. April the 20th. Lelinek said Weinberg Campus hopes to have a conversation with the State Health Department to address its concerns. He said Weinberg is hopeful the state can make an exception since the license would allow the Jewish Home of Rochester to provide home care services to more than 600 residents of its continuing care retirement community in Rochester and to other people in that community.
And truckers are struggling as diesel costs soar. Jamie Hagan believes the Great Freight Recession was finally over. Last year was a tough one for his South Dakota trucking company, Hellbent Express. He was thinking about shutting down, his cash drained in the lean years that followed America's post-pandemic shopping spree. But he refied his equipment, wagering demand would pick up and freight rates would rise again. We started seeing some real progress. There was a lot of hope, he said. Then the Iran war started. Diesel, the largest day-to-day expense in trucking, has jumped 41% the start of the war to a national average of nearly $5.42 a gallon. The rise in oil prices is rippling through the U.S. economy, and gas prices have jumped for drivers, and grocery bills may soon rise. Small fleet owners like Hagan and independent owner-operator drivers are hit hardest by the oil spike in the for-hire trucking industry. They typically own their rigs, pay for fuel and maintenance, and find freight on the volatile spot market where shippers post one-off loads for carriers to transport. Small truckers aren't making money fast enough from these rates to cover their higher diesel cost. Large carriers like J.B. Hunt and Schneider National are less exposed to the pressures he's feeling. They have long-term shipping contracts with fuel surcharge clauses that are adjusted automatically when diesel increases. Big carriers often run more fuel-efficient trucks than small operators and have sophisticated fuel hedging strategies. Most small operators don't get these fuel surcharges. Rates are on the spot market, are negotiated all in without a carve-out for fuel. Small operators are lucky to recover half of the higher fuel cost in their rates, said Dean Croak, principal analyst at DAT Freight in Analytics. Small guys in spot market are really getting dumped on right now, he said. Truckers also often don't get paid for months after hauling a load. Large carriers with working capital can manage, but it's brutal for small operators facing thousands of dollars extra in fuel costs today. The pump hit $999.99 at a fuel stop this week when it shut off. short of a full tank for his orange 18-wheeler Mack truck. Truckers are usually paid by the mile, not by the hour, and his costs have shot up 20 cents a mile since the war began, wiping out the 5 cents he usually earns. We were already on the very breaking point to begin with. This is like the nail in the coffin, he said. The number of truckers on the road grows when demand is hot and shrinks as the economy cools. Some 450,000 owner-operators currently haul long-distance freight by the truckload, estimates Stephen Burks, a former truck driver and economist at the University of Minnesota Morris, who researches the industry. Thousands of operators flooded into the market starting in 2021 to haul goods to Americans stuck at home and flushed with pandemic stimulus checks. Most firms that sprang up to capitalize on the demand have fewer than 5 employees, Burks said. Freight rates climbed nearly 40% and business boomed. You couldn't throw a stone without making a profit, Hagan said. But the market turned at the end of 2022. Consumer demand began to slip and rates started falling. The industry suddenly faced a different problem. Too many truckers chasing a slowdown in freight. Many mid-sized carriers, small fleets, and thousands of independent truckers all exited the industry. The diesel shock could force some truckers to park their rigs, lifting rates for operators left standing. Christopher Lloyd, a longtime truck driver in Richmond, Virginia, is trying to hold on, and he became an independent owner-operator in 2024 after years of driving for different companies. He spent $187,000 on a new flatbed truck. He has witnessed trucking go from a ticket to the middle class to slowly creeping its way to an economic backwater. Rates, driver pay, and benefits have all been driven down since federal deregulation of the industry began in the 70s and 80s. But he has no plans to leave. As long as I can still feed myself and keep the lights on, I'm hanging on.
A Ryan appointee who held on to her old job resigns. Former Buffalo Commissioner of Community Services Danielle Roberts continued in her position as a vice president at the Buffalo Niagara YMCA while she worked at City Hall for the first months of the year. Roberts, who was appointed by Mayor Sean Ryan as he took office at the beginning of the year, kept her previous job with the YMCA with the permission of the Ryan administration in order to tie up loose ends at the not-for-profit before she left. But the administration announced last week that Roberts resigned this month. When Danielle Roberts interviewed for this commissioner position, she was fully transparent about the fact that she required a transition period that would allow her to satisfactorily wrap up her previous leadership role. Her continued employment with the YMCA during this transition period was agreed to and disclosed in the financial statement she filed with the city, a city spokesperson said in a written statement. Attempts to reach Roberts by a Buffalo News reporter were unsuccessful. Roberts' resignation and her dual roles during her time at City Hall were first reported by WGRZ-TV. Roberts informed the administration that she planned to resign as commissioner before the agreed-upon transition period was over and helped the Ryan team assess the city's pools and community centers in order to set priorities for needs, according to the statement. In advance of the vacancy, she worked with Mayor Ryan on a transition plan for the department and continued to fulfill all responsibilities of the position, the spokesperson said. The city is now seeking her replacement. We are grateful that the city benefited from Ms. Roberts' deep expertise in youth programming, senior services, and facilities management during her tenure as Commissioner of Community Services, and we wish her all the best, according to that statement.
And now, as part of our newspaper reading, we present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, you can call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Kathleen M. Anderson, née Lindner. Andrew N. Bonet. Patricia Patty A. Kofta, née Erisman. Milton A. Ehrenberg. Lois A. Morogue, Timby. Lieutenant Colonel John M. Seneff. Albert Gagola, Jr. Daniel A. Rubino. And Clara B. Gramza, née Kozniewski. Again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
Now it's time for your royal stars. Happy birthday for Tuesday, March 31st. You are a steadfast realist who is resourceful. You are calm and in control. This year you will receive recognition for your past efforts. You might attain power and leadership. Aries, give yourself extra time today so you have wiggle room to deal with surprises related to work, your health, and your pet. Tonight, listen and cooperate. Taurus, a surprise invitation might come your way today. If so, be ready to act quickly. You want some adventure. Tonight, get better organized. Gemini, your home routine might change today. Stock the fridge because someone unexpected could drop by. Small appliances might break down, or a minor breakage could occur. Tonight, forget all that and enjoy socializing. Cancer, pay attention to everything you say and do today. Your daily routine might change, but this could be fun. You might see new places and meet new faces. Tonight, relax at home. Leo, today you might find money, or you might lose money. Okay? Be smart and protect what you have against loss, theft, or damage. On the upside, you might have a clever money-making idea. Tonight, continue that with clever conversations. Virgo, today the moon is in your sign, dancing with unpredictable Uranus, which is why you probably want emotional excitement. Seek out people who are different from you. Tonight, maintain your belongings. Interesting. Libra, this is a restless day for you. You don't have to figure out why. Just relax. It's a temporary hidden stimulation, so just go along with it, because tonight you win. Scorpio, you might meet someone unusual today, or perhaps someone you already know will say or do something that catches you off guard. Tonight, enjoy your privacy. Sagittarius, by nature you are an independent soul. Today in particular, you will fight for your independence and freedom, which is why an interaction with a parent, boss, or someone in authority might be surprising. So tonight, warm your friendships. Capricorn, travel plans might be changed today, or perhaps you might suddenly decide to travel somewhere. You might encounter someone who is different. Tonight, you are admired. Aquarius, double check banking details and anything to do with shared property, insurance issues, wills, and debt. Tonight, do something different. Pisces, a spouse, partner, or close friend might do something you least expect. If you're lucky, it's a fun invitation that pleases you. Tonight, check your finances. And I think the main word there today was might.
Might. Money, might. You know,
Yeah.
if I could just go back, I'm sorry, I missed the name and the death section. And it's Magira Martin, Magiera. Sorry for that. And you are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for March 31st on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. We'll return for more reading after this short break. Your readers today are
Lori and
Alita.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
Are you going to start? We'll
Okay.
continue now with our readings of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are Lori and
Lita, in case you forgot. Okay, so let's go over to some New York State news. Trial lawyer president accuses Hochul of kowtowing to car insurers and Uber and backs Baskin-Ville. The president of the New York State's Trial Lawyer Association on Monday said that Governor Kathy Hochul's proposal to put surging car insurance rates would only increase the profit of insurance carriers and decrease the legal rights of crash litigants. Flanked by car crash victims in a state capitol news conference, Association President Andrew Finkelstein accused Hochul of being very antagonistic toward the trial lawyer lobby. Asked why she would take such a position, Finkelstein said, Hochul, who is up for re-election, has taken millions in campaign dollars from Uber, as well as insurance companies. Frankly, she's in the pocket of these insurance companies and Uber, and she's carrying their water, Finkelstein said, and we're going to stand up to her. Finkelstein said the Hochul administration's Department of Financial Services, which regulates insurers, has turned a blind eye and rubber-stamped insurance industry requests to raise premiums without any transparency. Finkelstein backed the proposed Justice and Affordability Act, a bill sponsored by Senator April Baskin from Buffalo and Assemblymember Jen Lunsford of Parenton. That would prohibit insurers from discriminating against customers due to their age, race, or gender. It would require companies to receive prior approval for rate hikes and to publicly disclose their applications for their increases. I agree with that. We encourage our members of the Senate and the Assembly to stand up to the governor, to hold her accountable, and let her show specifically the correlation between her proposal and how premiums come down. Finkelstein told reporters, she's yet to do it, and there's a reason why she hasn't done it, because she can't. There is no connection between her proposals and reductions in premiums, but there's a direct connection between her proposal and the profits of the insurance carriers. Hochul, who has been focused on affordability, has blamed trial lawyers for blocking her proposal to keep reckless motorists from profiting off lawsuits they cause. Hochul's $263 billion budget includes legislation to cap the amount of non-economic damages awarded to drivers who are uninsured, intoxicated, commit a felony, or leave the scene of a felony incident. The budget, due on the 1st of April, is expected to be late due to a number of policy disagreements, including how to address rising insurance costs between Hochul and legislative leaders. You can't make it up. One of Albany's most powerful special interests is launching desperate attacks on Governor Hochul for trying to save New Yorkers money and root out fraud, waste, and abuse. Sean Butler, a spokesperson for the governor, said in response to Finkelstein's remarks, right now, our broken car insurance system makes a few New Yorkers rich at the expense of skyrocketing costs for the many. It's time we put an end to that broken system and get that money back in New Yorkers' pockets. In a phone interview, acting DFS Superintendent Caitlin Asrow said Hochul's proposals would cut costs by targeting fraud and litigation, which the superintendent said were the two driving causes of increased rates in New York. She said Hochul's budget offers immediate cost relief to drivers through discounts if motorists take safe driving courses and dashboard cameras. She said DFS scrutinizes every rate proposed, adding if the claims do not justify premiums, then insurers do not get to charge higher premiums. Asrow, whom Hochul appointed to lead DFS in October, said Finkelstein's accusations that DFS turns a blind eye to insurers is absolutely not correct. She said DFS has a publicly available checklist that shows all the data that the agency looks at when insurance companies ask for increases. I have personally denied rates. I have personally cut rates. And so that happens frequently in the department, Asrow said. The Baskin-Lunsford bill would require Asrow to hold a hearing to determine the fairness of any rate adjustments for applications of more than a 5% increase on personal auto insurance rates or 10% on commercial auto rates. The bill prohibits insurers using demographic criteria such as age, race, gender, religion, educational attainment, home ownership, or other broad classes that are currently protected from discrimination in other areas of law. Motor vehicle insurance rates have been on the rise and have become unduly burdensome to working New Yorkers, the memo of justification for the proposal stated. The current rate-setting methodology used in New York State allows motor vehicle insurance carriers to use many factors that are unrelated to criteria that directly impact the likelihood of a claim or loss. Further, the rate increase approval process allows motor vehicle insurance carriers to raise rates on all of their covered drivers year over year up to a certain amount without approval or oversight. Even the applications for such an increase, whether requiring approval or not, are not publicly available for inspection through a New York State website and are challenging to access for public inspection. The bill is in the insurance committees of both the Senate and Assembly.
And a white elephant bill aims to spur revival. Buffalo Next Development. The Central Terminal, the Richardson Olmsted Complex, Statler Buffalo, the M&A's Department Store, the DL&W Terminal. Buffalo has no shortage of mammoth historic buildings that have suffered decades of neglect and are badly in need of as much as a $300 million worth of restoration. But developers are struggling to make the projects financially viable, even with a host of available tax credits and tax breaks. So the buildings are sitting, unused and largely untouched, if not deteriorating further. State Senator April Baskin wants to address that by tripling the state's historic tax credit from a maximum of $5 million to $15 million for what she has termed the white elephants in the state. Certified historic buildings that are very large have been vacant for at least 10 of the last 15 years and need more than $50 million in renovations. That easily covers each of the 5 biggest in Buffalo, which are each estimated to cost well over $200 million or more. The executive director of the Central Terminal Restoration Corp., Monica Pellegrino-Foe, projected her facility's total renovation costs, including the passenger concourse, terminal, baggage building, and tower, to be $300 million. Statewide, according to the State Historic Preservation Office, at least 35 buildings could qualify. We need a larger tax credit for developers to be able to take on the bigger projects because we're sick of them being an eyesore in our community, Baskin said. They are rich in history. They are rich to family memories, and I desperately believe they will be rich in making Buffalo a much wealthier place. There's also an emotional connection. For so many Western New Yorkers, buildings and structures like the Central Terminal are full of personal stories, personal moments in history, said Baskin, whose great-great-grandfather was a Pullman porter at the Central Terminal and whose grandmother worked at the AM&A's building. We have to preserve the architecture here in Buffalo that has made Buffalo so great, she said. Buffalo is blessed with one of the most significant collections of historic structures designed by some of the most important architects of our time. Baskin also noted the added expense can come with renovating large historic buildings. These buildings are massive. These buildings are complex, and they are expensive to restore, she said. Too often, buildings like the one that we're standing in today sit vacant because of the cost of bringing them back to life is just too high. Bernice Radel, Executive Director of Preservation Buffalo Niagara, noted that 14% of tourists visiting Western New York come for its architecture and its historic preservation. These credits are vital to making these projects work, she said. This bill is so critical on so many levels. Of course, the increased credit is still a fraction of those total costs for such massive projects. But advocates said that if developers can break up the overall ventures into smaller, focused, and more manageable pieces of just over $50 million each, they could obtain the credit for each one, covering as much as 30% of their cost instead of just 10%. But they would have to be separate projects with distinct ownership entities, not simply phases. That's the way we think we're going to eat the elephant when we get the legislation passed. is to break it up, said Paris Roselli, executive director of Richardson Olmsted. If you break it down to its component parts, it seems to make sense. Baskin's bill was introduced a year ago, but it has gained steam as she has been reaching out across the state. Just a month ago, it gained a companion bill in the Assembly, sponsored by Assemblymember Pamela Hunter, a Democrat from Syracuse, whose district also has a white elephant structure, and that structure is the Sears Building. We are working hard with my partner in the State Assembly to get this bill over the finish line this legislative session, Baskin said. It's building momentum. There's a lot of support. Every single day, more and more people are standing behind me. I'm more than confident that now is the time to get this done. The Buffalo Common Council is poised to pass a resolution in support of the legislation Tuesday, and the Buffalo Place Board unanimously approved a similar resolution just last week. The National Park Service also sent a letter of support, Baskin said, and she's working on the State Historic Office. These buildings, right now, need a lot of work, and with costs and materials and the intrinsic nature of having a historic building, they're quite expensive, Fillmore District Council member Mitch Nowakowski said. The money does not go as far as it used to go just 5 years ago.
Moving over to the political notebook, Pentagon is accused of defying judge's order. The Pentagon has flouted a court order blocking it from enforcing a policy limiting news reporters' access to the Defense Department's headquarters. A New York Times attorney asserted Monday in urging a federal judge to compel the government's compliance with the 10-day-old order. U.S. District Judge Paul Friedman didn't immediately rule after a second round of arguments from lawyers for the newspaper and the Trump administration. The Times claims Pentagon officials have implemented a revised press policy that circumvents the judge's March 20 ruling. Friedman sided with the Times this month in deciding that the Pentagon's new credential policy violated journalists' constitutional rights to free speech and due process. He ordered Pentagon officials to reinstate the press credentials of 7 Times reporters and stressed that his decision applies to all regulated parties. Times attorney Theodore Boutros said the Pentagon responded to Friedman's order by imposing a new revised policy that imposes radical new restrictions on journalists. Government attorney Sarah Welch said the Defense Department's revised policy on media access to the Pentagon includes several safe harbors protecting reporters engaging in routine forms of news gathering. The department has fully complied in good faith with that March 20 order, Welch told the judge. And the U.S. formally reopens the embassy in Venezuela. The United States has formally reopened its embassy in Caracas after the restoration of full diplomatic relationships with South American country following the Trump administration's ouster of then President Nicolas Maduro in early January. The State Department announced Monday that it had resumed normal operations at the embassy in Caracas, which had been in need of significant repair, including remediations from mold after a 7-year closure that began during President Trump's first term. A small team of U.S. diplomats based in Colombia has been working in Caracas for more than a month, but the embassy itself had not yet been reopened. The State Department said the move marked a new chapter in our diplomatic presence. Lori.
In Venezuela. Okay, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 14 minutes after the hour. Let's talk about the Sabres.
Yeah.
Sabres are ready to hit a turning point of 100. A 100-point season only a few years ago was nothing more than a pipe dream for the Buffalo Sabres. Now, as the calendar inches toward April, the idea of capturing a 100-point season is a very tangible reality. The Sabres enter Tuesday's game against the New York Islanders at KeyBank Center with 98 points. As of Monday afternoon, they were one of 3 Eastern Conference teams closing in on the 100-point threshold. The Sabres, Carolina, and Tampa Bay all began the week at 98 points. Only 2 NHL teams as of Monday morning have earned at least 100 points, and that's Colorado with 106 and Dallas with 100. It doesn't happen a lot, Sabres right wing Josh Doan said. You look around at how many teams have 100 points in the playoffs every year, and there's usually 5 or 6, And to be one of those teams, it's exciting. The road to a 100-point season isn't just a product of happenstance for the Sabres, 45-21-8. They used some calculations in this pursuit. They also pinpoint the exact timing of what put them on this trajectory to be within 2 points of earning 100 for the season. The return from the NHL's Winter Olympic breaks, which lasted nearly 3 weeks, from February 6th to 24th. They took on the task of continuing the momentum and the confidence that they built after the Olympic break. The Sabres had 70 points, were fourth in the Atlantic Division, and in the Eastern Conference first wild card spot when they resumed the season February 25th at New Jersey. There was a lot of talk about, hey, can we do it after a break and get some time off? Sabres goalie Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen said, just coming off the break and going into an 8-game winning streak straight away, it was huge for us to build our confidence and to know that this thing is working and the way we play, it's working. A 2-1 victory against the New Jersey Devils became the first win in an 8-game winning streak. The Sabres are 13-2-2 since that night in Newark, New Jersey. They don't want to slow anything down, even despite dropping 3 consecutive losses last week, 6-5 in overtime to Anaheim, 4-3 in overtime to Boston, and 5-2 versus Detroit. We talked about it coming out of the Olympic break, that we put ourselves in a position to make the playoffs. But it's going to be a long 25 games, Doan said. Now we're 13-2-2 since then, and we put ourselves back in a good position again. Just 3 years ago, the Sabres finished with 91 points, but were eliminated from playoff contention with 2 games left in the 2022-2023 season, edged out of the playoffs by the Florida Panthers for the final berth in the Eastern Conference. We kind of realized it 3 years ago, kind of not finding our game, and kind of banging our heads against a wall for a couple years with the talent that we had, Luukkonen said. But when we had the huge winning streaks this season, we realized we can take on any team in this league as long as we play our way. We can win on any given night. The most direct course of action to get to the 100-point mark is to do it the easy way, not the hard way. Win Tuesday against the Islanders and get 2 points. Or play in games that go to overtime Tuesday against the Islanders and Thursday at Ottawa and earn a point from each game. Winning, though, is the expectation, and that is a product of the consistency the Sabres built to execute. It is also a far cry from the years when the playoffs were simply out of reach by this point in the season. There's been plenty of games in which, in the past couple of years, we would have dropped or not gone to overtime, or we would not have stuck around in those games, Luukkonen said. There's been plenty of games this year where we've been able to, even though we haven't played our best hockey, we've been able to stick around. We've been able to find a way to get points out of those games. Now, the Sabres are within the closest reach of a 100-point season for the first time since 2009-10, when that year's team finished with 100 points. The Sabres will find out this week if they can hit the 100-point threshold for a 10th time since the franchise joined the NHL in 1970-71. We've dealt with a lot of adversity early in the years, Sabres coach Lindy Ruff said. We've stayed the course. We've been able to put together some really good strings, a couple of almost 10-game or 10-game streaks. Strings where you're getting points to 7 to 8 games put us in a position where if we win on Tuesday, it gets us there. And it's not a fake. The Welcome to Buffalo sign on the inboard lanes of the Kensington Expressway, which is also Route 33, at the Cheektowaga-Buffalo border, was temporarily changed within the last week to read, "Welcome to Lindy Ruffalo," in honor of the Sabres' success this season and their impending playoff qualification. It has received national attention across the United States and Canada, and yes, Lindy has seen it. I thought when I first saw it, somebody sent it to me, I thought it was AI generated for sure, Ruff said. Then I saw it was falling off, and I hope they kept it. But I think somebody's fixed it again.
Okay, just a couple of Bills notes. Quarterback Allen likely to be a full go for workouts. Josh Allen's recovery from foot surgery is on track, and the quarterback is expected to be a full participant in the Buffalo Bills off-season program. That encouraging update was provided Monday morning by Brandon Beane at the NFL's annual meeting, which is being held at the Arizona Biltmore. I don't want to say it's 100%, but he's good, Beane said of Allen. We expect him to be, when he gets back in April, full go. The Bills' medical staff, including team physician Dr. Leslie Bisson and head athletic trainer Nathan Bresky, have been in contact with Allen's surgeon, and all reports are that Allen should be able to participate in the off-season program without any restrictions. Allen revealed after the season that he played through a broken fifth metatarsal in his right foot. It was a previous injury he re-aggravated during the Bills' 21st of December game against the Cleveland Browns. He had surgery in late January in Birmingham, Alabama. A few days later, Allen showed up on One Bills Drive for the news conference introducing Joe Brady as the team's next head coach. The quarterback spoke then about the painful end to the 2025 season and his role sitting in on head coach interviews. Allen has kept a low profile since that point, but is expected to next speak with the media when the Bills open this offseason program. And Ryan Vandermark improved enough during his third season with the Bills that Beane was willing to pay the offensive tackle $3.5 million in 2026. And the Bills lost Vandermark last week, though, when they declined to match the one-year $4.5 million fully guaranteed offer sheet he signed with the Minnesota Vikings. Beane tendered Vandermark a contract for 2026, and the Bills had the right of first refusal if someone beat their offer. Vandermark started 6 games with appearances at left and right tackle across 3 seasons since starting with the Bills as an undrafted free agent. The swing tackle turned 28 this month and appeared in 43 games with Buffalo. His departure leaves Tylen Grable and Chase Lunt as the primary backups at left and right tackle. The Bills may not be done adding to the position group, though. Who knows what happens in the draft, but we'll try to add depth, said Beane. There are some vets that we've talked to as well. You're proud of Vandy. You don't want to lose him, but it was already a hard number for us. We were stretching to kind of make it work. Adding that the way it was structured was going to be a little tough for us. Beane told reporters Monday that the Bills and Cleveland Browns have tentatively agreed to hold a one-day joint practice ahead of a preseason game this August. The late summer tune-up will give Allen an opportunity to face Browns record-setting defense end Myles Garrett, whose 23 sacks in 2025 were the most in a single season by an NFL player. The Bills beat the Browns 23-20 on the 21st of December, with Allen suffering a foot injury while he attempted to avoid a sack from Garrett. Cleveland will be a different team in 2026, though, with former Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken as the Browns head coach and Deshaun Watson possibly the starting quarterback. Teams cannot officially announce joint practices yet because the NFL has not released the preseason schedule. The playing future of cornerback Dorian Strong remains uncertain. Strong, a 2025 sixth-round draft pick, had neck surgery earlier this offseason. The injury limited him to just 4 games in what was a promising rookie season. It's just in the healing process phase right now, said Beane on Monday. There's not a lot of rehab to it. It's just kind of see how it goes. It's a specialized surgery, and beyond that, not a lot of details. It's still as unknown where that is and whether he'd be able to return. Strong started the 2025 season opening against the Baltimore Ravens following injuries to Maxwell Hairston and Tre'Davious White. He played well in that game against the Ravens, not allowing a reception according to NFL's Next Gen stats. Strong was hurt in the Bills' Week 4 win over the New Orleans Saints.
And McDonald is to be named Bonnie's coach, reports say. St. Bonaventure's next men's basketball coach will be Damon's Mike McDonald. According to multiple reports, McDonald, a 1988 Bonnie alum, was finalizing a deal Monday morning to replace Bonnie's former 19-year coach, Mark Schmidt. ESPN's Pete Thamel, Field of 68's Jeff Goodman, and CBS Sports' John Rothstein each reported that McDonald and Bonnie were finalizing a deal for the coaching job on Monday morning. McDonald recently guided the Damon men's basketball team to a 33-2 overall record, its 6th NCAA Division II tournament berth and 2nd Elite Eight appearance. The only teams to beat the Wildcats this season were Gannon and Lander, and the 2 teams in the NCAA Division II championship games. McDonald is 61-3 over the past 2 seasons, and he posted his 500th career win in December. He has previously coached a Division I program at Canisius. That was from 1997 to 2006. He also coached a Division II at Medaille, 2016 to 14, and then arrived at Damon in 2014. McDonald guided Damon to its first NCAA Elite Eight in 2021. In 2024-25, McDonald's Wildcats were ranked number 1 in the nation and began the season 28-0 before falling in the second round of the NCAA D2 tournament. This season, Damon was ranked as high as number 2 in the nation. The Wildcats captured back-to-back East Coast Conference Tournament championships and the East Region title. According to ESPN, BANA plans to pay McDonald more than half of what it paid Schmidt, which was about $1.5 million per year, according to WIVB. The Bonnies, whose NIL budget ranks toward the bottom of the Atlantic 10, plan to reallocate those resources to player salaries and to revenue shares. Division I programs hiring formidable coaches from D2 ranks has become something of a trend. St. Louis's Josh Schertz came from Indiana State via Division II, Lincoln Memorial, where he went 337 to 69 in 13 seasons. Iowa's Ben McCollum coached one season at Drake, which hired him after his 15 seasons at Division II Northwest Missouri State, where McCollum went 395 to 91. McDonald was reportedly among several coaches St. Bonaventure targeted to replace Schmidt. He addressed the report following Damon's win over Roberts Wesleyan in the ECC Tournament Championship game that was March 11th. There's 3 reasons my name comes up, McDonald said. 1, I went to school there, but that was a long time ago. A long time ago. Number 2, BANA General Manager Adrian Wojnarowski is a friend of mine. I've known him for years. But number 3, the biggest reason is because of those guys in that locker room right now. Those guys have won games, and that's why. That's the only reason. So it's flattering to be mentioned, but I haven't heard from anybody, and I don't anticipate to hear from anybody. Following days of rumors that Schmidt was suddenly leaving BANA's basketball program, he officially announced his plans to retire at the conclusion of the season during a post-game press conference following the Bonnies' regular season finale loss to Davidson March 7th at Riley Center. The Bonnies, 17-7 and 4-14, extended Schmidt's career in the Atlantic 10 tournament as they became the first number 13 seed to advance to the quarterfinals. BANA defeated LaSalle and George Mason in the first 2 rounds before falling to Dayton. Schmidt won a program record 341 games at Bonnie. Basketball is the fabric. It's the heartbeat, Schmidt said March 13th. Expectations are high, but St. Bonaventure is a good place with good people. You've got to make sure that you become part of the community. That's the best advice I've got when I first got there. You've got to be an Olean Allegheny guy, and you've got to be a part of the community because that community in Olean or Allegheny, it's prideful. Those people think that Olean is the best place in the world, and you just can't talk negative about it.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 28 minutes past the hour.
And I'm going to just interrupt real quickly. For those of you who are interested in the NCAA Final Four, for the men are UConn, Illinois, Arizona, and Michigan. Back to you,
That's
Lena.
going to be a good one. Mm-hmm. And around and about in news and notes, the New York Marathon winner has been banned for 5 years. The 2021 New York Marathon winner, Albert Korrer of Kenya, was banned for 5 years after he admitted doping, track and field investigators said on Monday. Korrer tested positive for the blood-boosting substance CERA, a modern version of EPO, in 3 different samples taken in Kenya last October while he was training to run in New York. The Athletics Integrity Unit said in its verdict that all his results since October will be disqualified, including his 3rd place finish in New York last November. The 3 positive tests constitutes clear evidence of the athlete's use of a prohibited substance on multiple occasions, which is expressly identified in the definition of aggravating circumstances, the verdict said. And ex-Fighting defensive back DB Browner, dies at 65. Joey Browner, a 3-time All-Pro defensive back who played 9 of his 10 NFL seasons with the Minnesota Vikings has died. He was 65 years old. The Vikings announced Browner's death Sunday and said his family had informed the team. A cause of death was not released. A native of Warren, Ohio, who played in college in Southern California, Browner was selected by Minnesota with the 19th overall pick in the 1983 NFL Draft. It was the first time the Vikings had used a first-round pick on a defensive back. In other NFL news, the NFL is moving forward with plans to begin hiring and training replacement officials in the next several weeks because negotiations with the referees union has been unsuccessful. Two people with knowledge of the discussion told the Associated Press. The league and the NFL Referee Association have been negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement since the summer of 2024, and the current CBA expires on the 31st of May. Irish rugby players are going to be playing college football. Irish rugby player Neff Giwa has never played American football, and that will change soon because Giwa, who is 6'7.5" and weighs nearly 300 pounds, has committed to play at South Carolina as an offensive lineman. The 20-year-old, who is also a Nigerian, selected the Gamecocks over offers from Miami, North Carolina, SMU, Tennessee, and Texas. Giwa showed interest in football only a few months ago and linked up with the American recruiter Brandon Collier in Germany. Collier brought Giwa on a recent tour of U.S. colleges, and a video clip of one of Giwa's workouts piqued the interest of several schools. And the PWHL suspends Scepters player after incident. Toronto Scepters forward Clara Van Wieren was suspended for one game by the Professional Women's Hockey League on Sunday following an incident Friday night versus the Boston Fleet. Boston won the game 4-0, but late in the third period, Van Wieren received a major penalty for boarding. In its review, the PWHL's Player Safety Committee determined Van Wieren's raised her stick with both arms, causing the shaft to strike Boston's Sophie Shirley in the back and sending her dangerously into the boards. Boston defender Rellen McKinnon was fined $500 for an incident that ensued following the hit. McKinnon delivered a cross-check to Van Wieren after grabbing her face mask and pulling her to the ice. McKinnon's wasn't penalized on the play. In other PWHL news, Sarah Wozniewicz gave Ottawa the lead. Rookie Peyton Hemp scored her first goal, and Gwyneth Phillips posted her first shutout of the season as the Charge blanked Seattle 2-0 on Sunday despite the return of Torrance captain Hilary Knight. Seattle activated Knight from long-term injury reserve before the match. Knight had 3 goals and 7 assists in 14 games before sustaining an injury at the Winter Olympics. And Hyo-Jo Kim beat Nelly Korda for the second straight week, pulling away around the turn Sunday and closing with a 3-under-69 for a 2-shot victory in the Ford Championship in Phoenix. Kim was poised to break the LPGA Tour's scoring record for 72 holes until one mistake led to a double bogey on the 8th hole and gave Korda hope. Korda, who trailed by 4 at the start of the final round, suddenly was only 1 shot behind, but the American missed a short par putt on the 9th, and that was followed by a 2-shot swing on the 10th. Kim hit her approach to 18 inches of the birdie, and Korda failed to get up and down for par. Korda never got any closer until the tournament was out of reach, finishing eagle birdie for a 67.
Let's do auto racing. 8 is not good enough for Verstappen. 4-time world champion Max Verstappen has not ruled out retiring at the end of the Formula One season, saying he is trying very hard to enjoy racing under the new changes. The Red Bull driver again openly expressed his dissatisfaction on Sunday after an 8th-place finish at the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka, Japan, which was won by the 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli of Mercedes. Privately, I'm very happy, Verstappen told the BBC after the race. You also wait for 24 races. This time it's 22, but normally 24. And then you just think about, is it worth it? Or do I enjoy being more at home with my family, seeing my friends more when you're not enjoying your sport? The 28-year-old Verstappen said, "That's just what I'm saying," when asked by the BBC if this could be his last season. "I want to be here to have fun and to have a great time and to enjoy myself. At the moment, that's not really the case," he said. Of course, I do enjoy certain aspects. I enjoy working with my team. It's like a second family. But once I sit in the car, it's not the most enjoyable, unfortunately. I am trying. I keep telling myself every day to try and enjoy it. It's just very hard. Verstappen is among the drivers struggling after one of the most significant regulation changes in F1 took place this season. I can easily accept to be in P7 or P8 where I am, he said, because I also know that you can't be dominating or be the first or second or whatever fighting for a podium every time. I'm very realistic in that, and I've been there before. I've not only been winning in F1, but at the same time, when you are in P7 or P8 and you are not enjoying the whole formula behind it, it doesn't feel natural to a racing driver, he said. Of course, I try to adapt to it, but it's not nice the way you have to race. It's really anti-driving. That at one point, it's just not what I want to do. Formula One now takes a 5-week break with races scheduled for April in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia called off because of the war in Iran. The next race is May 3rd in Miami. Mercedes continues to dominate. George Russell was second in China 2 weeks ago and won the season opening race in Australia, which means Mercedes has victories in the first 3 races of 26. In Japan, Kimi Antonelli started from the pole with Russell alongside him, but neither got a great start, with Oscar Piastri beating both to the first turn and holding the early lead. But Antonelli and Mercedes again showed that they have mastered the 26 car configuration, which features a 50-50 split between internal combustion and electrical battery power. The cars are also lighter, narrower, and shorter than last season, with many drivers complaining about the new regulations, the most radical changes that have happened in a decade. Antonelli's good fortune. McLaren's Piastri got a great start. Antonelli didn't and wound up in 6th after the first lap, but he clawed his way back. He had the lead on the 22nd lap when Haas driver Oliver Biermann lost control and hit a tire barrier, triggering the safety car. Biermann limped out of the car but was reported later to be in good shape by medical officials. Antonelli said he got a bit lucky with the deployment of the safety car. I don't know what would have happened, what the outcome would have been without the safety car, Antonelli said, but that definitely made life a lot easier. McLaren, much, much better. Piastri also wondered what might have been, but acknowledged Mercedes probably had too much pace. It's a shame we never got to see what would have happened, but for us at this point to be disappointed about finishing second, it's a pretty good place to be. Piastri did not even start the season's first 2 races. He crashed on a warm-up lap prior to his home race in Australia, and both McLaren cars failed to start in China due to electrical faults. I think this weekend we just did a really good job of optimizing what we had, Piastri said. We just nailed everything. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite enough for the win, but at the moment, a result like today is as good as a win. Hamilton went all last season without a podium driving for Ferrari, but managed 3rd place in China. He was close to another podium in Japan, showing that Ferrari is much more competitive. I've not lost what I had, Hamilton said this week in Japan.
And moving over to asking Eric, Dear Eric, my boss is what could be called a functioning alcoholic, which in this case means that in spite of having a severe drinking problem, he manages to hold down a job, even while actively drunk. Over the years, I have been phasing out the act of looking the other way. My refusal to accept his drinking has led him to cast his wrath upon me on occasion. He thinks that I am trying to take him down. What I want is for him and for everyone in my office to face reality. It is a very sad thing to watch, and thankfully I don't have to interact with him much. I feel let down by my boss. A big part of my job is to make him look good, and it seems like he's sabotaging my efforts. I have now basically given up my support for him. If I were to report him to upper management or talk to him about it directly, I would prefer to do that later. The latter. He would just clean up his act for a few days and then revert. Now it feels like working for him is making me an enabler of his habit. I am seeking some way, anyway, to cope here. Signed, Lost Office Worker. Dear worker, it will help you to put an internal boundary between you and your boss. In your letter, there seems to be a sense of personal responsibility for or disappointing in disappointment in your boss and his actions. While his drinking is a professional problem that's impacting your ability to do your job, stopping it seems to have taken on aspects of a personal crusade. It's telling that you feel like you're enabling him. Doing your job, even if that requires fixing his mistakes, isn't enabling. There's a hierarchy here. You don't have the power. Drawing that distinction for yourself is going to be helpful. It may not be feasible for you to make him and everyone in the office face reality, nor is that your job. To that end, talking to management is going to be a better choice than continuing to be drawn into and triggered by his actions. You can express your concerns about him. There is absolutely help available, but your focus in this conversation with the management needs to be on what you need in order to be able to do your job successfully. That's the thing you can control. Dear Eric, my boyfriend and I have been together for 6 months. We're men in our 30s. I have a very friendly relationship with my ex-partner that my boyfriend resents. He never has anything nice to say about him and is always misreading the things my ex says and does. I think my boyfriend mostly resents the fact that I have a close relationship with my ex because his relationship with his ex is basically non-existent. I don't blame him for wanting nothing to do with his ex. Everything I've heard about the ex sounds terrible. My ex, who is really just a good friend at this point, is part of a group trip that we've been invited to on this spring. I really want to go, but my boyfriend is acting very strange about it. He keeps talking about the cost, and he complains that he doesn't want to take time away from work. He works for himself. He says I can just go without him, but should I believe him? Signed, Vacation Friend. Dear friend, on one hand, sure. In relationships, we should be able to take what the other person says as the truth, or the truth as they understand it. And, in turn, we should endeavor to speak with vulnerability and transparency. So many relations get hamstrung by one or both partners expecting the other to read their minds. But when it comes to boyfriends, girlfriends, partners, spouses, the psychic hotline is disconnected. Mm-hmm. We have to say what's on our minds. To that end, you should be able to take what your boyfriend is saying at face value. But that sentiment has an asterisk the size of an asteroid. I wouldn't recommend you do that now. Although his doubts are unfounded, his insecurities are part of what he's communicating to you. So whether or not you decide to go away with your friends, you and your boyfriend need to have a conversation about trust. And he'd be wise to work on whatever trauma is still lingering from his last relationship. He doesn't have to be best friends with your ex, but our partners don't get to dictate who our friends are. This friendship was a part of your life when your current relationship started, and he needs to learn how to accept it because that's a part of accepting you.
And amid expected crowds, Artemis II launch looks A-OK. Hundreds of thousands of spectators are expected to descend on the Space Coast this week for a chance to witness something that has not happened since the last century. Humans will be headed to the moon for the first time since the Apollo program back in 1972. The Artemis II mission, a lunar flyby, could launch from Kennedy Space Center as early as 6:24 p.m. Wednesday, taking NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, and Christina Cook, as well as Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, on a 10-day flight that could set the record for the farthest distance by a human ever traveled from Earth. We are getting very, very, very close, and we are ready, said Lori Glaze, Acting Associate Administrator for NASA's Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate. Wow, that's a title. During a mission update Sunday afternoon. Given the magnitude of this launch's historic significance, it's hard to estimate a visitation number, said Megan Happel with the Space Coast Office of Tourism. But she noted 2022's Artemis I mission had between 150 and 200,000 visitors, and even more were on hand for the Demo 2 mission of 2020 that returned human space flight to the Space Coast after the end of the Space Shuttle program nearly a decade earlier. Multiple hotels have reported being sold out for the launch attempt, she said. The popular viewing locations around Titusville, Cape Canaveral, and Cocoa Beach are sure to see large crowds. So anyone wanting prime viewing locations should plan on getting there well ahead of time and having some backup options just in case their first or second choice is full. The Artemis True crew have been in quarantine since March 18th, but shifted from Houston to Kennedy Space Center with 5 days out before the launch opportunity. They talked with media from KSC's astronaut quarters on Sunday. Things are certainly starting to feel real here at the Cape, Cook said. If things go well, they will suit up and head out to KSC's launch pad 39B on Wednesday afternoon to climb into the Orion spacecraft atop the Space Launch System rocket, which recently was rolled again from the vehicle assembly building after having to retreat from the pad for repairs that took February and March opportunities right off the board. This team that has really crushed it, the exploration ground systems, the folks that have gotten the vehicle ready and repaired, the things that needed fixing, and to watch them really maintain that schedule and to get that rocket into the VAB and back out to the pad, Glover said. When they lift off, they will become the first humans to ride the most powerful rocket to ever launch to orbit. The SLS has 4 RS-25 engines from the Space Shuttle program, paired with 2 solid rocket boosters that combine to produce 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff.
Wow.
When you see this vehicle on the pad, you look at the size of this vehicle, you know it's going one place. It's going to space, and it's going to get there in a hurry, Wiseman said. He added that while he's commanding the mission, all 4 of the crew are loaded up with responsibilities. At the end of the day, every ship needs a captain, and I'm ready to make those decisions, but I'm not making them in a vacuum, he said. I can just watch my crewmates here. I know their facial expressions. They know mine. We know when we're tense. He said all 4 remind each other, no fast hands in the cockpit. You do not want to do anything too quick in this vehicle. You need to take your time. You need to process everything. Almost always, it pays bigger dividends to move forward than to go backwards, he said. The mission won't fly to the moon right away, but instead spend a day first, orbiting Earth. During that orbit, they will perform maneuvers to test out manual control of Orion. If all checks out, they will perform a translunar injection burn for the 3-day trip to the moon. Cook said the spacesuits are designed to act as individual lifeboats, which could keep them alive for up to 144 hours in the case of something like a cabin leak. That allows them multiple options to abort the mission at multiple points during the flight plan. If the crew launches Wednesday, Orion could fly 252,799 miles away from Earth, which is 4,144 miles farther than the current record holder, which was the Apollo 13 mission of 1970. The point of Artemis II is to prove that Orion can keep astronauts safe, with the spacecraft flying with life support systems and command and piloting hardware for the first time. The spacecraft will once again come back hot and fast with a re-entry that could hit near 25,000 degrees Fahrenheit, coming in at 5,000 miles per hour before slowing to a parachute-assisted landing in the Pacific Ocean. NASA's old-timers weigh in. The people who toiled night and day to put astronauts on the moon during Apollo are thrilled that NASA is finally going back. They just wish that these Artemis moonshots had happened while more of Apollo's workforce was still alive. Now in their 80s and 90s, the dwindling survivors of NASA's greatest generation would also like to see more enthusiasm for Artemis. So few of them are left from the original 400,000 that no reunion is planned to celebrate the upcoming Artemis II flight. Those living near Florida Kennedy Space Center will watch the launch from their backyards. Because it was the first time, there was an energy, there was a passion that probably is not exactly the same today and hasn't been for a while, said Charlie Mars, age 90, who worked on Apollo's command and lunar modules and helped establish the American Space Museum in Titusville. Retired engineer Joanne Morgan is still fuming that the last 3 Apollo moon landings were canceled under President Richard Nixon's watch because of budget cuts, risk concerns, and shifting priorities. She was the lone woman inside launch control when Apollo 11's Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins rocketed to the moon in 1969. 3 years later, Apollo 17 closed out the grand era. I'm just trying to stay alive so I can see us actually get back and step foot on the moon, she said. I'm 85 and I still feel cheated after 53 years. Good for her.
Yeah. Yeah, the only woman. That's amazing. Immigration advocates appeal to higher powers to sway the justices. As the Supreme Court considers the future of birthright citizenship, some advocates fighting President Trump are speaking directly to conservative justices on how fundamental one's faith can be to identify identity and citizenship. Several groups that have filed briefs in the case to be argued Wednesday refer to the moral imperative of welcoming strangers with references to Scripture and call attention to the kind of practical dilemmas believers might face if the Trump administration restricted the 14th Amendment guarantee that all children born in the U.S. are citizens. They are addressing a Catholic court majority that has favored religious interest in disputes over education funding, Christian displays, and various government policies. Many legal analysts across the ideological spectrum believe Trump's ideas here are radical and bound to fail. But the High Court has been receptive to other elements of Trump's bold agenda, and immigrant rights advocates and other challengers have brought forth a variety of arguments, including related to religion. Lawyers for Project Rousseau, which serves vulnerable young people, argues that the justices should consider children who are unable to prove their parenthood and citizenship. That would include some babies born to members of religious sects, such as the Amish and Mennonites, that shun formal birth documents. If the Trump administration prevails, Project Rousseau contends such religious families would be forced to decide between their free exercise rights and their birthright citizenship rights. Ilan Rosenberg, lead counsel on the brief, also invokes the justices' recent interest in safe haven laws, sometimes seen as an alternative to abortion, as the group focused on babies abandoned at birth. He quoted Justice Amy Coney Barrett's observation from 2022 oral arguments in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization that in all 50 states you can terminate parental rights by relinquishing a child after birth and perhaps leaving the child at a hospital or fire station. Rosenberg told the justices that a child anonymously surrendered under a safe haven law would never be able to prove what the government proposes as essential to citizenship under the 14th Amendment, the citizenship status of his parents. The Supreme Court in Dobbs reversed the constitutional right to abortion guaranteed in the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. The court's majority has increasingly sided with religious conservatives elsewhere, including to uphold a coach's prayer in public school football games, to expand state funding of sectarian education, and to keep Christian symbols on government property. One brief spotlights that the American colonies were established by people fleeing persecution for their religious practices. The enshrinement of birthright citizenship in the 14th Amendment, wrote a group of 57 faith-based organizations, has a deep connection with the nation's history as a haven for those escaping religious persecution, including the forebearers and current members of many of Amici's faith groups. Several of the 13 colonies were founded by groups such as Quakers escaping religious persecution or seeking to secure religious freedom. Among the organizations that joined the brief, in addition to the Friends General Conference, Quaker, are the Alliance of Baptists, American Jewish Committee, Council on American Islamic Relations, National Council of Churches, and the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Such religiously imbued briefs are among more than 60 Friends of the Court filings in the case of Trump versus Barbara, testing the means of the 14th Amendment, which dictates that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. About two-thirds of those amicus briefs support the challengers. They contend the 14th Amendment's history and court precedent entrenched virtually unrestricted birthright citizenship. Trump's lawyers have fastened onto the phrase subject to the jurisdiction and contend that anyone in the country unlawfully or temporarily, such as on a student visa, is not completely subject to U.S. jurisdiction. Some groups joining the Trump administration have offered alternative interpretations of the history and tradition of the 14th Amendment. One filed with a religious theme came from the Christian Family Coalition of Florida. It contends that allowing birthright citizenship for illegal aliens and transients would invite people who promote religious bigotry. Lower court judges ruled against the Trump move to limit birthright citizenship, finding that it breached the text of the 14th Amendment and conflicts with 1898 milestone. In the U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark, the court ruled that a man who was born in Chinese citizens living in the U.S. was a U.S. citizen. Many of the amicus briefs fighting Trump reinforced arguments regarding the long-standing history and tradition of the 14th Amendment. Among the various briefs touching on religion from the challengers is a provocative argument recalling the anti-Catholic and anti-immigrant hostility of the Know-Nothings in the mid-1800s.
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Tuesday, March 31st. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been Lori and
Lita.
Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the supermarket ads, and at noon we have today's USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which